the point is that I bought this thinking it was good. I bought this thinking this is what rock and roll is. Cliff singing about devil women, singing about, includes the phrase take her from behind at one point, which is unbelievably rude and naughty, and I thought this is what it's all about. Okay, so before I start this, I've done Desert Island Discs, and I've noticed when you do that program, I tried not to do this, that people will sometimes choose songs and tracks that make them look cool. And I've sort of noticed that with this as well, is it feels to me, maybe those people just are cool, but they choose quite cool tracks. But I'm not sure, really, going back to childhood, you can say that these are just cool things that changed my life. Otherwise, you've just had a cool life, which no one has had. So because I'm sort of pathologically honest, I'm going to include some very uncool tracks. I hope that's okay. So we'll begin with a track called Donna by Joan Baez. This is a folk song, and the reason I've chosen it is probably the first time I ever heard a song that I thought, oh, that's a song. I understand what a song is I was at a Jewish camp. I used to go to a thing called Habonim, which was the first time I ever met anyone who weren't in my family, and I'd meet other Jewish people and we would talk about life in London in the 1970s as Jews. And then we would go on camps involving tents, normally somewhere in a field in Shrewsbury, and we would sit by the fire, and then men who were looking after us would play folk songs. And the one I always remember is this song Donna, which basically is quite kind of weird because it has in it the phrase, oh, the winds are laughing, ha ha ha, which I always thought, that's a bit weird, they actually are laughing. And I was about 9 at the time, and the thing is that the reason I've chosen that is when I hear that song now, it still absolutely moves me. It still puts me back to when I was 9 or 10 or whatever, sitting around the fireside at these Jewish youth camps, joining in with this song. And so it must have at some level formed an idea in my head of what a song was, what it could do, how a song could be moving. I believe the lyrics of Donna are supposed to have been carved by a Holocaust victim. They're supposed to have been carved in a truck by a Holocaust victim. I don't know if that's absolutely true, but I do remember without understanding it that it moved me, that the music moved me and the lyrics moved me without understanding it. So that's my first track that changed my life. Why don't you have wings to fly with? Okay, so number 2, and this demonstrates what I said earlier, that I am not going to choose cool tracks, is Devil Woman by Cliff Richard. Now, it's kind of weird to say this changed my life because maybe it didn't, but I think it is, and I'm working with my old memory here, the first single I ever bought. And I think the reason that I'm going to say it changed my life is I think the point is that I bought this thinking it was good. I bought this thinking this is what rock and roll is. Cliff singing about devil women, singing about, includes the phrase take her from behind at one point, which is unbelievably rude and naughty, and I thought this is what it's all about. This is the real gritty reality of rock and roll. And I think probably the reason I've included it is that soon after that I realised that was wrong. I realised that Cliff was not the soul of rock and roll and that there were other places to go for that. And so I thank Cliff now for taking me down the wrong road and allowing me to go there and then to be led out of it by other music. Having said that, it's still a banging track. Okay, so the third one, I would say, and this is a sort of two-parter, and slightly relates to what I was saying about Devil Woman and finding, rock and roll elsewhere, is Anarchy in the UK by the Sex Pistols. And you'll see, that might sound fairly cool in a kind of 70s way. You'll see I'm going to make it not cool in a minute. But I do remember really being excited by punk when I was sort of 15. I was slightly too young for it, certainly in my sort of lower middle class Jewish life to actually go to that many punk gigs. But I remember staying up to listen to John Peel in whenever it was, 1976, for the, I think they banned God Save the Queen, but he was able to play Anarchy in the UK. I used to read The Enemy, and The Enemy was suddenly full having been absolutely full of sort of folk singers and progressive rock for years, of these people with their spiky hair, and it was sort of terrifying at the same time enticing. I didn't know how to backcomb my hair. That's what you've got to do to have spiky hair, and I just thought you put like hairspray on it, so I put my mum's Silvercrin on it and just messed it up and didn't look at all right. I tore up the one t-shirt I had. It looked terrible. I put a small safety pin in it. I was a rubbish punk, but at the same time I did think this is amazing. You know, in a way that perhaps doesn't exist now. It sort of provided this subcultural identity for a teenager that felt very, very real and vital, and it is a sort of brilliant track. There's something, I mean, it's sort of hard to remember now that there is something actually musically brilliant and really unusual about that voice and the power of those guitars and whatever, and the look and all the rest of it. So Anarchy in the UK, but the next track will show you how it then went wrong. I think what happened was I was playing football, which I used to do a lot in the park opposite my house with my brothers, and a bloke came up to me, and as happened a lot in the 70s, people just liked fighting. I mean, that was the thing in the 70s. People weren't really happy unless they'd had a fight. And he quite threateningly said to me, "Who's your favourite pop star?" And I think I said Cliff Richard, and I think he possibly hit me. I can't remember. But then he told me that his favourite pop star was David Bowie, who I hadn't really heard of at that point. And then I think I went and heard Diamond Dogs, which is, I don't know if it's one of Bowie's most famous albums or not. It's certainly in what I consider to be the golden period of Bowie, which I think is the largest golden period that any great artist, pop artist, has ever had. It's unbelievable. It goes from, in my opinion, Man Who Sold the World, which is in sort of 69, 70, 71, all the way to Scary Monsters, which is sort of 1982. It's a 12-year period in which all his albums are brilliant, but Diamond Dogs I think is the one I came in on, and it's an album about 1984. It's unbelievably 70s in its sort of apocalyptic craziness. He's on the cover, he's half dog on the cover. Every track's absolutely fantastic. I'm going to go for When You Rock and Roll With Me. So I'm going to leave you with possibly the least cool track, which is I Believe in Father Christmas by Greg Lake. Now, the reason that I'm choosing that one is that has changed my life in a very specific way, which is I came from a Jewish background. We never did Christmas. And I think when I realized, Christmas is great. There's this massive party going on elsewhere on the 25th of December, because when you're in a Jewish household, it can feel like, hang on, we seem to be missing out on all this joy. That partly came to me through I Believe in Father Christmas, because I do actually think that I Believe in Father Christmas is the best Christmas song of all time, musically, but also lyrically, because it creates a dream, I think, when it says, they go, the peal of a bell and that Christmas tree smell and eyes full of tinsel and fire. I think it spoke to me, partly I'm from an immigrant background, my mum was a refugee from Nazism, of a British Christmas, of this kind of vision of Christmas, of sort of the English countryside and a promise of peace that Christmas sort of has, this sort of endless Sunday that Christmas is, that spoke to me as like, oh God, that's what I want. That's what I want Christmas to be, and I'm not getting it here. So now I do Christmas really in a big way in our household, and I think that's all due to I Believe in Father Christmas, so it clearly changed my life.
They sold me a dream of Christmas. They sold me a cyanide.
If you enjoyed that video, click here to subscribe to Radio X.
Radio X.